Welcome back to JB Reviews. Today we are going to test the high output, which is on the left side, and the standard output Hurricane inline 6s. Now when you look under the hood, you don't really notice a big difference between the two. Like the intake, even like the overall layout, like the turbocharger. However, I did read online that they do share 96 common parts between the two versions, basically. And the high output has 72 parts unique to that design over there. So obviously that makes more sense. It has more horsepower and torque, which I'll go over here in a second. But let's kind of go through some of the things that are the same on these engines. Number one, both engines have an aluminum deep skirt block with plasma transfer wire arc. They also share an aluminum block, which also has a closed deck design. The main bearing of both engines are cross bolted, kind of like what GM does with the L8T. And the last notable similarity between these two engines is they both have forged crankshafts from twisted steel and are clasped by forged steel connecting rods. So for the most part, they're both overbuilt engines. Most likely the turbos are going to be different, and the boost is obviously going to be a little bit higher on the high output version. But let's go ahead and drive these trucks. Let's go ahead and get the Grand Wagoneer out first, only because there's like 3 more of the Wagoneers here, and believe it or not, these Grand Wagoneers, even though they're like $115,000, like this one's $113,000, they sell pretty quickly, because I've wanted to do this video for like the last 3 months. So let's go ahead and drive the Grand Wagoneer first, and then we'll drive the Wagoneer. I just reset the trip computer's trip A, and if you're new to my channel, we do own a 2022 Wagoneer. I bought my wife, she has the 5.7, and I will admit to you guys, I know that they are adding these inline 6 forced induction engines because of fuel efficiency, but we probably get on average about 17 to 19, and that's probably 50-50 driving, because we live pretty deep in the country now, and so it takes us about 15 to 20 minutes to get to the highway. And that engine does have the cylinder deactivation known as MDS, multi-displacement system. We always disable it. I do, at least. My wife probably doesn't do it. I disable it every time I drive it, because I've heard that it does cause issues over time. But let's go ahead and discuss some of the performance that comes out of this inline 6, and then we're going to do the 0 to 60. So here it is. This is the high output version of the new Hurricane twin turbo inline 6. It's going to have 510 horsepower, which comes on around 5,700 RPMs, and 500 pound-feet of torque, which comes on around 3,500 RPMs. The compression is 9.5 to 1, and 26 psi is the amount of boost that this engine puts out. This oil is also a little different from what you're going to see inside of the Wagoneer's standard output, so it's going to be a 0W40. Let's see how this engine performs 0 to 60 wise. Almost forgot, 8-speed transmission, which is the 8HP75 made through ZF. Probably one of the most reliable things that Chrysler is using in these trucks right now. Here we go. I don't know why this one did a little bit worse than a Wagoneer that I did a while back. I want to say I had a Wagoneer do 0 to 60 in the 6s, but that was a different day. It might have been a little bit cooler when I did that test as well. So right now it's 90 degrees outside. So when we drive the standard output, we'll be able to get an idea. But I do like this Grand Wagoneer. I know a lot of people feel as though this thing is not worth the extra money. Looking at this interior, the fit and finish, the dash, this has heads-up display. The panoramic sunroof on the Wagoneers adds like another almost $4,000, I think, because it's not for just this. You have to get a bunch of other stuff that you probably don't want to get this. So I almost feel as though if I'm gonna spend 80 grand for a Wagoneer, you almost can pay another 10. That's just how I look at it. Our Wagoneer was 60 grand, so that's why for us it was like, you know what, it made more sense. And you get a lot of things standard. But we're about to get to the halfway point. I'm gonna show you guys some of the fuel economy numbers when we get there. And just like that, we have made it to the midpoint. Hopefully we can go right through the light. Nope, the light is red. So we're gonna stop. And we're at 13.5 so far. 13.6. And I love that about the air suspension. It does adjust as you drive too. Now you can put it in aero mode. Right there, you can see it. And it does have an entry and exit, and then off-road 1 and off-road 2. So let's see how loud this interior is. I'm gonna turn the air condition down to level 5, and we'll try to do the same thing for the Wagoneer too. This thing's quiet. I'm accelerating too. Normally I don't do it this way. But I'm gonna get up to about 65 miles an hour. I'm at 61. Wow. On this side, 64. 61, 62 out back. So yeah, this is pretty quiet. Now, I do agree with some of my friends, like when I talk to them about these turbocharged engines. Most people are going to get worse fuel economy with these because you don't hear the engine, right? And I'm used to hearing something. I wish they would give you, before I say anything, because sometimes I've had to put my foot in my mouth, I would like for them to give you a boost pressure gauge. Let's see if they give you one. They don't give you one. So that's probably the only thing I would say. For some people, you're gonna have to learn how to drive this, because if you put your foot in this thing, I'm telling you, it will get terrible gas miles. I think you can get worse than the V8s. This does have dual fuel pumps too, versus the Wagoneer that has only a single. But we're gonna be back soon. I'm gonna show you guys some of the temperatures here before we get back. And yeah, you guys will see where we ended off with fuel economy. So these are the numbers for the Grand Wagoneer. The axle ratings are the same at 3,900 pounds up front, 4,530 out back, and then the gross fuel weight rating does go up. So 7,700 pounds, the Wagoneer was 7,400 pounds. And that's gonna help this number. So this is 1,416 pounds. So all the extra equipment on this is why they raised that gross fuel weight rating. And this is what it weighs on the curb. So 7,700 minus 1,416, 6,284. So it's about, what, a couple hundred pounds heavier? So we just pulled back in. Here's some of the temperatures. And then here is where we ended off at 16.3, 20 minutes driven. And let's go ahead and jump in the Wagoneer. So now we're driving the Wagoneer, and now that I'm inside of this one, despite this one having more like tech than my Wagoneer, it does not feel as nice as the Grand Wagoneer. And I know a lot of people have mentioned that too, like they don't really see the difference between the two. I do. It's a huge difference. Now, I think they should have made this a more off-road oriented SUV compared to the Grand, or at least had more off-road like trim levels, like maybe a good and great. But yeah, let's go ahead and discuss this standard output power, and then we're gonna do the 0 to 60. The standard output Hurricane is no slouch. It still has class-leading numbers over the 5.7 that it replaces. It's gonna have 420 horsepower that comes on at 5,200 RPMs. Remember, with the Grand, it came on at 5,700 RPMs for the 510. Also, it has 468 pound-feet of torque, which comes on at 3,500 RPMs, which matches the Grand's high output. 8-speed transmission, just like the Grand Wagoneer. And The compression is higher at 10.4 to 1, 22 psi of boost, and 0W20 oil. Here we go. I guarantee that they limit the boost on this engine, or not on this one, on the high output. I'm willing to bet you that the high outputs have some type of break-in period until they give you all the boost. So once you get over maybe 500 to 1,000 miles, that's when you'll get all the performance from that engine. Because like I told you guys, I've tested like 3 or 4 of these, and every time they're consistent. Now I got down into the 6s with one of them. I think I did it against a Grand Cherokee L, and it was a long wheelbase Wagoneer too. So yeah, that's pretty impressive performance. I mean, the 0 to 30 on this one, that's pretty dang good for a big SUV like this. I should start doing some cars now that I have, well, I don't know how long I'm gonna be doing this draggy, but like I might get another 0 to 60 timer, and maybe we'll start doing some cars because we're so high above elevation that does affect the performance a little bit. So these things are probably rocket ships at sea level. But let's go ahead and talk about the comfort of this ride here. They do provide ventilated seats, heated steering wheel. All that stuff comes standard. And these seats up front, they're not as boisterous as the Grand Wagoneers, but they get the job done. And I do like this color too. This color is very, very clean. And the steer feel on this one, I mean, I love the 2-spoke steering wheel. And when you corner, like I said, the ride is so nice in the Wagoneers. It's just not as refined in the Grand. Like if you can afford the Grand, just get the Grand. Like I'm serious when I say this. Don't go this route because it's more cost effective. If you got the money, spend it. Because if I had it, I would have a Grand Wagoneer for my wife. But like this thing is just, yeah, it's great, but it's not the Grand Wagoneer. Like every time I get inside of a Grand Wagoneer, like I should have just stepped up and bought one. But yeah, they're just so expensive. And I don't know how they're going to depreciate. That's probably the biggest thing for me. Like I was looking at it on the depreciation side. You know, 10% at 60,000 versus 10% at 100,000 is a different number. So yeah, but we're about to get to the midpoint here and we'll check in with the fuel economy. So in case you wanted to see the numbers on this one does have a gross axle weight rating up front at 3,900 pounds. The rear is 4,530 with a 7,400 pound gross fuel weight rating. And then here's the payload, 1,342. And this is how much this Wagoneer weighs. We are rolling up on the midpoint. Let's see where we are for fuel economy. Okay. Sorry for that glare there. So 12.3. We're about to catch the light here. So pretty much the exact same scenario as the Grand. And as we stop, so we're actually a little bit behind, aren't we? I can't remember now, but 12.5. Let's talk about some of the sound level inside of the Wagoneer. Wow, this is like a little bit quieter than the Grand Wagoneer. 60. And I have the fan at the same level too. 65, 66. 61, 62. When you hit bumps, it's like at like 67, but this is pretty dang quiet too. It's basically the same. But they do have the same tires. I didn't discuss tires with the Grand Wagoneer, but they're exact same as the ones on this Wagoneer. So you won't see much of a difference there. But one thing that again, just hit bumps, there's just a little bit more bounciness to the springs on this versus the air. The air, it kind of adjusts as you go. So it's just It's just more refined, like I said earlier. It's just a better suspension. And we're gonna get back to the dealership soon. I'll show you guys the temperatures again when we stop, okay? All right, so we're getting ready to pull in now. I want to show you guys some of the temperatures. The layout on the Grand is a little different from this one too, by the way. All right. So we're gonna stop next to this ProMaster. And here's where we are. Wow, 15.7, 13.6 miles driven. What was the Grand? It was like 16.3. Oh, wow. Interesting. I was not expecting that. In my mind, this was going to be the performance leader. This was going to be the MPG leader. Now, I did drive the routes the exact same, and I'm very shocked by the fuel economy. So, on the highway, you probably can get the numbers that they show, but in the city, that's where everybody's going to have a hard time at, because if you're not able to limit that boost, and they don't give you like an eco mode, which Stellantis, I think you should do that, like an eco mode to really lower that boost. They do it for the EVs to help people to kind of learn how to drive them, and they do need to do that for these. But I hope you guys liked the video. The Wagoneer's performance is strong. I didn't mention this earlier, but at the top end around 60 miles an hour, you could see that this was running out of steam, and that's where that extra horsepower came in at, and it would have passed it. I mean, granted, don't get me wrong, I think that once the Grand Wagoneer is broken in, I think off the line and all the way up to the quarter mile, it'll be far ahead of this Wagoneer's standard output. But yeah, same transmissions, very smooth, they handle well. My pick would be the air suspension. You can get that on the Wagoneers too, so if you're looking to build one but you don't want to go this expensive, that is an option on this side. Hope you guys liked the video. Special shout out to Larry H. Miller here in Sandy, Utah. Be sure to give these guys a look up. See you guys soon.